Hello, I'm Toby Skerritt from Foundation IT, and welcome to a brief series of videos relating to Foundation IT's interest in cryptocurrencies, specifically Bitcoin. It's fair to say that most people within FIT have an interest in cryptocurrencies and tokens in general. We're technologists, we're a technology company, and we see a lot of potential in the services they aim to provide. The company itself has made some steps towards Bitcoin adoption, and we hope to take more in future. In early 2020, our managing director, Andrew Sellers, took the decision to convert the company's liquid capital into Bitcoin. This has led to much better returns than traditional bank deposits, as you can imagine, even over a short time scale. In mid-2020, Foundation IT also created an employee investment scheme where FIT provided investment into cryptocurrencies for all staff. The cryptocurrencies that were chosen were, the choice was given to the staff, and most people, I think, opted for either Bitcoin or Ethereum, but there were some other interesting tokens in there, such as Cardano. All taxes were paid for this by the company, and everybody has seen significant gains, obviously, since then. We're keen to do more in this space, though, and first steps were discussed around the possibility of creating a Bitcoin node, as this provides both security and community benefits. Today, I'm joined by Elliott McKenna, who's one of our senior engineers at FIT, to discuss the benefits in more detail. So, Elliott, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, thank you for joining me.
Can you perhaps start by explaining what a Bitcoin node is?
Yeah, sure. So, in a brief summary, a Bitcoin node is something that you can deploy by yourself, and how it works with the network is it ensures that transactions and blocks adhere to the consensus rules, which means that they must be correctly formatted and that people can't do things like double spend or reverse transactions. They can also detect fraud if a mining reward for a block is not correct. So someone may try and get more coins than they deserve, or pretend that they've mined a block and they actually haven't, and things like that. So you can think of a node as like the law keepers, I suppose, and miners as the players that actually play the number guessing game to mine a block and get the reward for that.
That's great, thank you. So hosting a node is different from mining Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Can you explain perhaps the differences, please?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So when you mine, you typically have maybe, well, nowadays you have huge setups, massive data centers where you've got loads and loads of graphics cards, GPUs. They seem to be, or they are the most, or that they're one of the ways that you can mine. And you also have things like ASICs, which are designed specifically for mining. And it's basically what you need to do is you need to have a lot of hash power to mine. And the reason for that is when a block is mined or proposed to the network, it becomes a sort of number guessing game, not necessarily a guessing game. There's an algorithm involved. It's a hash algorithm, and whoever can get that right hash number first puts that into the network, and then that's where the full nodes come in, and they can say, okay, yeah, this works with the previous blocks, and the hash is there. We're happy with this. This conforms to all the rules. So the miners, they're doing the actual work for the blocks. You've heard proof of work. The miners are basically doing the proof of work, and a full node is something that has the entire ledger and makes sure that all the miners are playing by the rules, and that also other nodes are playing by the rules as well.
It's interesting, thank you. So the miners, it's fair to say, are combining transactions into a block, a history block, I suppose, and the nodes are essentially record keepers, keeping record of those changes.
Yeah, and sort of overseeing as well, making sure that everything conforms to the protocol as well. Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. So for a business like Foundation IT or anybody who's interested in blockchain technology, what benefit does hosting a node offer?
So the biggest one is going to be security. When you want to interact with the blockchain, you can use things called sort of blockchain explorers, but these rely on third parties usually. So like if you go to Google and type in Bitcoin Explorer, you would essentially be interacting with a full node somewhere. And what that means is, say for example, if that blockchain explorer was to be compromised or controlled by a nefarious party or an attacker, they could spoof information shown to you, because they're in control of that website, they're in control of that information. So what you can do firstly with a full node is you're downloading the blockchain as it happens. So you first of all you download the full blockchain when you first set one up, and then afterwards you're collecting information and receiving blocks as they're generated, and verifying them. So the whole process, you don't have to worry about whether or not the blocks coming to you are valid or not, because your node is a validator, and so it works in conjunction with all the other full nodes to say, yep, this is right. I can see that the previous hash numbers are this, and so the new hash number that's here is correct. I won't go too much into that because it's I can go down a rabbit hole, but basically it uses the previous numbers to know what the next number should be, and that's how blocks are confirmed. So that's one of them. So security. Another reason why it benefit your business is because you're contributing to securing the Bitcoin network in general as a whole. So if you're invested in Bitcoin, you're helping to protect it, which is a good thing. You're protecting your investments. You can also verify business transactions without concerns of spoofing again. Same thing with the Block Explorer. So if you want to look at history, you can do that if you've got your own node. Likewise, if you want to make sure that a very recent transaction has gone through correctly, you're directly interacting with the Bitcoin network with your full node, so you can verify transactions without fear of a third party, man in the middle getting involved. You can also pseudo vote with the node as well. So what that means is if there's a fork in the protocol, you can actually decide which fork to follow by which version of the blockchain that you continue to support and maintain on your full node. So for example, if there was a split between probably a classic example, Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Cash, anyone running a full node before that fork, they would have had to decide whether they wanted to support the Bitcoin Cash fork or the Bitcoin Core, and they would have used the appropriate software, the updates and things like that accordingly. And I think lastly, probably a good one as well, is if you run a full node, it's good to learn a bit more about Bitcoin and the inner workings and things like that.
Our objective here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's good for knowledge, and it's good for experience. It can expose you to different operating systems if you choose, and expose you to different methods of computing, I guess, and interacting with computers. Yeah. Great.
So main benefits as we see it then are having our own trusted ledger, so we're not relying on somebody else to tell us the status of a transaction, and hey, contributing to the wider network, providing that ledger, providing a trusted location for others as well. So given that, there are a few options that we've investigated for running our own Bitcoin node internally. There are packaged hardware solutions that we can purchase, which offer this functionality without the need to get involved in any of the implementation yourself, plug and play essentially. Or the route we've actually decided to go down is to build a node ourselves from scratch using the available code. Can you explain what the rationale is in taking one path over the other?
Yeah, sure. So let's say you're like a small cafe, and you want to start accepting Bitcoin payments, but you also want to be able to validate them yourselves. But then again, you also don't have room really to host hardware and things like that. You may want to, you might be in a position where you say, okay, well, I want to be able to do that. I want to check the blockchain privately, but I don't want to spend too much on IT infrastructure or hosting or things like that. So what you can do is you can rent a virtual machine in pretty much, mostly all host providers, anywhere where you can get a virtual machine. You can do that and build your node from there. There are services where there's pre-built full nodes that you can rent as well for a monthly fee. Or you can even, if you do have space but you don't want to get the hardware yourself, or you don't know what to get, you can also get pre-built hardware nodes as well. So the differences really are the virtual machines, you don't have to worry about the hardware, you just have to stick the software on. The pre-built virtual machine nodes, they're all built up for you. You just basically have to go through the setup of the full node before you can use them. So all the software is there, but you just have to initialize it. And then the pre-built hardware, you've got the hardware, you've got the software on there, the operating systems, all that set up. So you just have to go through the initialization as well. The way we're doing it is we've got hardware available to us. So it makes sense for us just to utilize that. There could be an argument to say the other ways open up security risks, because if someone else is hosting your full node, obviously if they've got access to the hardware, then there's always a risk there that they could be nefarious or have malicious intent. But I think a lot of the services I've seen or I've seen talked about, they run in Azure and things like that, which security isn't as a massive concern there. But again, if you're a really big business, it really makes sense for you to be using your own hardware anyway, just for
so it's
security.
A belt and braces approach there. Then we don't necessarily feel that there is any untoward behaviour from the self-contained nodes or from third parties. It's just when we have hardware available and we trust our own abilities, why would we hand that off to somebody else with a potential risk there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and also it's for the sake and purposes of us as well. It will be a good exploration of the technology as well. It's going to be good fun. Yeah.
And with that in mind, then we've decided on an approach. What are the next steps?
So, well, the next steps is a fair amount of research, just to make sure that you've got all your ducks in a row, so to speak. You need to consider things like the minimum requirements, which for Bitcoin Core is quite conservative, I suppose, or quite relaxed. It's about, I think, 7 gigs of free disk space as a start. You need 2 gigs of RAM. You need a broadband connection, which nowadays most people do have. You need to be able to have your node on for at least 6 hours a day, but you can leave it on for 24 hours if you need to. So things like electricity have to be taken in consideration. But again, you're not mining, so there's nowhere near the same type of electricity consumption.
And then after that's an interesting one. If we could just dig into that. So I was assuming it would be left on 24 hours a day. What is that minimum limit of 6 hours? What's the requirement there, and do you know why that's there?
So I believe the 6 hours, if you only have it on for less, I believe it's I don't think the node is allowed to run for less. So if you say, for example, if you turned it on for 2 hours a day and then turned it off, you will be, I think you get put in a state where you're forever trying to catch up. I'm not too sure, actually. I'll need to double check that, but it
doesn't give you enough time to catch up with the ledger, perhaps. And
yeah, I believe so. I think also, I think you have to be on for a certain amount of time. Otherwise, you may not be considered for consensus as well.
That makes sense. So another point I was going to mention as well, and it's worth kind of throwing out there. There's been a lot of information in the news recently around the energy consumption required for Bitcoin mining. It's a little bit of false information there in that we've been seeing a bit of an arms race in the Bitcoin blocks are aiming to get mined every 10 minutes, one every 10 minutes, no matter what the mining capacity for the network. And as mining capacity reduces, difficulty reduces. So the issue we've had is that people have been racing to an unattainable end. A node doesn't work in that way at all. A node is not these high-powered mining rigs that take an enormous amount of power. We are going to be creating this node in the spare capacity that we have within our existing data center. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah. So with miners and the proof of work sort of algorithm, that's all about it's all about having a cost for doing something, and in this case, you're basically you're consuming energy to mine the block or to get that special hash, and that's kind of like the trade-off. So it's like you're to successfully mine or to process a blockchain for a Bitcoin transaction, you have to sacrifice energy. And the reason for this is so that someone can't come along and say, well, I'll just overwhelm the network with my blockchain nodes or my miner nodes and take control of it or dictate what transactions go through and what ones don't. There's always a cost involved, so that the bigger the network gets, the more power you need to be able to start influencing it. I mean, and that's a whole other conversation about the security of Bitcoin and all that. But the general concept is you can't do transactions on the blockchain freely. There's always a cost involved, and that prevents what's the word? It's like there's a specific word I'm looking for. It puts people off doing bad things, so to speak.
I think a discussion around proof of work versus proof of stake is an interesting one for a future date, maybe, but not currently. That's really useful. Thank you. So our next steps then are to go and do a little bit more research around deployment of a node internally and begin that journey. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and we're going to be building our one on Linux as well. So it'll be fun. Yeah, it'll be quite cool. Bit of a comfort zone, so because we're all used to working in Windows environments, but I'm going to go for Linux.
But Linux and Unix is definitely your area of interest at the moment, isn't it? So that's good to know. Elliott, that's been really useful. Thank you. I think we'll return next time for a review on where we've got to with the deployment of this node. Hopefully we'll have made some progress, and we can talk further about it then. But thank you very much for your time, and thank you to anybody watching this video. I hope you found it useful.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for having me.